#RedForEd, teachers strikes, schools closed, and march on the Capitol. These have been common headlines that have been gracing our local news recently. Could you imagine your job involving you to watch 20 to 30 plus children 7 hours a day for 5 days a week while trying to teach each child effectively enough to pass a standardized test? But also fear for your safety in the process because of the mass amount of school shootings that have already occurred this year. I have to ask myself this question several times because this is the career path that I'm working towards. We seem to think that teaching is a walk in the park because of the weekends off and the 2 to 3 month summer break. But we must consider how complex the job truly is. In Andrea Denhode's article, Striking Oklahoma Teachers Win Historic School Funding Increase and Keep on Marching, she quotes a 6th grade math teacher from Oklahoma City who states, "Teaching takes its various tolls on educators as they contend with tight budgets, understaffing, and the day-to-day practical and emotional strains of looking after children. With the multitude of jobs that teachers are required, it is only fair that they receive better pay and raises first and foremost." Although teacher strikes have been happening for many years, we owe it to West Virginia, Arizona, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and North Carolina for bringing the issue to current light. According to the article, Americans backed higher pay for teacher strikes, even taxes poll shows, published by Education Week, it states, Americans overwhelmingly believe teachers don't make enough money, and half say they would support higher taxes to give educators a raise. In this same article, it states in 2016 and 17, the average salary for a public school teacher was $58,950, down from the previous year. While $58,000 per year seems like to be a lot, this is not the pay that every teacher receives. It's always been a saying in the county that I grew up in, you don't teach to get rich, you teach because you have a passion to do so. In the article, new polls find most Americans agree teachers are underpaid and many would pay higher taxes to fix it, written by Valerie Strauss. She states a state poll conducted at High Point University in North Carolina in February found that 85% of North Carolina residents believed public school teachers earned too little, and 75% said they would be willing to pay more taxes to raise the average teacher compensation in the state to the national average within 5 years. If this is favored so highly, why does it take a march on the Capitol and schools to close in order for teachers to see a pay increase? That's because getting a raise as a teacher is not as easy as most jobs. A teacher gets paid by the state. Therefore, they must call upon the state for a raise that ultimately leads to the marches on the Capitol to raise awareness of that action. North Carolina teachers with a bachelor's degree cap out their salary at $52,000 per year once they have taught for 25 or more years. That shows us alone that North Carolina teachers don't even compete with the $58,000 per year national average salary. Because of the recent strikes held by teachers, North Carolina has increased teacher salaries by 6.5% in the 2018-2019 budget. According to David Labrie, author of On the Nature of Teaching and Teacher Education, Difficult Practices That Look Easy, he states, the student must be willing to learn what the teacher is teaching. Unless this intended learning takes place, the teacher is understood as having failed. Teachers have huge responsibilities as educators. It's hard for a teacher to make a child learn. They must have a great amount of patience with each child because grade school in most circumstances is not an option. It is the law that a child must attend. This is made even more difficult when the teacher per student ratio is always decreasing. With tightened budgets, Teachers are forced with schools expanding the numbers of students per classroom. Some classrooms have upwards of 30 or more students in them. This not only makes it harder for the teacher to contain the attention of each student, but also teach each student effectively. Most schools depend on standardized testing to evaluate how effective the teacher is. When adding more students to a classroom, it's unfair to assess a teacher because they have less time to spend with each student individually to make sure the student understands what he or she is learning. In a second article by Valerie Strauss, Teachers Have Had It, Why They're Revolting Against Low Pay and Inadequate School Funding, she states in 2015, Seattle teachers went on strike for a week and they won an end to the use of student standardized test scores to evaluate educators. While most teachers are already stressed by how effectively they are teaching, they must then worry about the supplies needed to educate their students. Some teachers end up using their own paychecks on much needed school supplies. Valerie Strauss depicts this in the same article when she says, many districts are so starved for cash that teachers spend their own money to make sure their classrooms have basic supplies, such as pencils and paper. With my daughter starting school this year, I have seen the school supplies list and purchased most of what was asked already. Knowing the cost of those supplies and that there are a lot of families that can't afford what is on the list, that leaves the teacher in a difficult situation to where they feel necessary to purchase the supplies for those children themselves. It's extremely hard for a teacher emotionally to see one child succeed while another does not, due to the limit of supplies that is a result of the environment the child is being raised in that he or she has no control over. But it's not just the stress and the emotion that educators are forced to deal with. It is the fear of not only their safety, but also the safety of each child, as every month, every week, and now it seems every day we are hearing of a new school shooting. When I was a student in school, the only drills that we ever practiced were fire and tornado drills. Now teachers are having to show their students what to do and where to go if a shooter ever enters the school. In Andrea Dohen's article, she discusses how the same sixth grade teacher, Allie Newcomb, had to react to an emergency lockdown when she says she pushed tables against the door and ordered her students to be quiet, to move to another part of the room, and then told them everything was going to be okay, that they'd climb out the window if they needed to. Although some schools will never see a shooter on their premises, we will never know which school that will be. It's obvious teaching is not a walk in the park, like we typically assume. Teaching is one of the hardest jobs and certainly one of the most underpaid. We often take teachers for granted, but need to step back and understand they are the ones that are shaping our future leaders and keeping them safe while doing so. While the recent strikes have not been all positive publicity, in the article by Fawn Johnson, The Chicago Teachers Strike's Silver Lining, she states, there is a bright spot to the Chicago Teachers Union strike that is stretched into the second week, keeping the city's kids at home and its public school teachers picketing the streets. People are actually talking about education. We tend to forget about our educators because education is a process that everyone must go through. But we need to remember the efforts that each teacher goes through in order to educate our children first and foremost. If anyone deserves a raise, it's our educators. A raise in awareness of everything that they do, but also a raise in their salary to compensate all of their hard work. Thank you.